everybody. Welcome to Chris's Chat Babble. Today I've got David McCracken. Now, some of you might know him, particularly if you've got good long memories. David was one of the original people for SPL. When did you join, David? It was quite some time ago.
Yes, I joined as a graduate fresh out of university, and it was it 2000 or 1999? I can't remember, but yeah.
Well, there we are. We've got a man on here with obviously 2 millennium of experience then. So yeah, welcome to this. I know you and I have only got relatively brief history, and it was quite interesting actually. I remember when I saw your CV and it popped up, it was like, hey, here's a guy that, there aren't very many new people that come into CC&B, particularly in a different region with this amount of experience. I know when we were talking about it, you've got almost 25 years worth of experience. How does it feel to be a veteran then?
Yeah, it makes me feel very old. But yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's great to have a chat. Yeah, it's interesting.
My pleasure.
It's really amazing. I remember when I first joined SPL. What's known as CC&B today was just kind of this concept or this prototype off the back of CAS Plus, their older product. And when I was younger, I just remember thinking, "Oh, that sounds new and exciting. I've got to get onto that." And I never would have thought at the time that here I am, 23 something years later, and we're still working with CC&B, and it's just continued to grow and just increase in number of installations around the world, and the scope and the complexity and what it's doing for utilities today.
Do you still recognize the same genetics of the original product in there?
Oh yes, definitely. It's all about the V, and that's the heart of CC&B. It's the data model that underlies the whole system and gives it its power and its flexibility and so forth. So that's something that actually came over from CAS Plus. But the original architects that developed it, they did such a fantastic job to come up with something that has really stood the test of time. I mean, here we are in 2023, and it's still able to bill customers and do all the much more advanced things that utilities are doing now these days compared to 20, 30 years ago what they used to do.
Yeah, and obviously with big data seems to be the big thing now, doesn't it? You get all this data and you're trying to analyze it and do things with it. And as you said, that says something about the product, doesn't it? The fact that it's still able to have the same architecture in there. So you mentioned the architects who first built it. Did they have lots and lots of experience within the utilities, or do you think they just got it right straight away?
So my understanding of I don't know exactly who they are. I know a couple of them. And worked with them when I worked over in San Francisco. I know that within that core team, one or two of them had a very, very strong accounting background, and this is where they developed a lot of very valuable IP around billing and bill segments and all this type of stuff to make it so powerful and flexible today.
Yeah. Okay. So you've worked, I think, pretty much around the world now, aren't you? I mean, you're now working in Europe. You spent time in Asia, obviously Australia, America, things like that. Any countries left on the list that you want to go and visit?
I think I've worked on every continent except for Africa, and I was going to work in South Africa at one point, but it just didn't come through. But I've been very grateful to have such a great experience to work in many different places: India, UK, Japan, so forth. It's been a really rewarding career.
Yeah, and you had a bit of an interesting time over the last 2 or 3 years, didn't you? Because you started a business in the Ukraine, and then something fairly major kicked off there. So that would have been an interesting time too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the last couple of years in my life have been pretty hectic. Basically, I left Australia to permanently go and live in Ukraine, where I ran a startup company there, and then obviously we had the war in Ukraine, so then I had to leave that country. I spent about 6 to 12 months, kind of being a bit displaced and not sure, trying to formulate my next step. Trying to also predict when this war is going to finish. I hope it's really soon. but then concluded that sadly it looks like it might go on for some time. So I've chosen a new home now, and yeah, I'm here in Belarus, in Minsk, Belarus, and I'm just going to take every year as it comes. I'm going to stop trying to plan ahead, because just when you think of something that you want to do, then some other curveball comes at you, whether it's COVID lockdowns or a war. Yeah, so just
Yeah, I think that's one thing I've learned over the last 5 or 6 years. If you'd gone back and said, Trump was going to become the president in America, we were going to cease to travel and there would be no planes in the sky for this amount of time, the UK would leave Europe. You look at that and you think, yeah, none of that's going to happen. Or if it is, one of those will happen. And actually, yeah, that's the one thing I think that we've all come to realize, is that what we don't think could happen could happen. Yeah, it's certainly an interesting time. So what do you see different with sort of the CC&B world now? I mean, there's a lot of conversations happening about things like distributed energy, resource management, water shortages, how electricity, all the renewables. What do you see? Do you have any particular views on any of that stuff?
Yeah, sure. What I've seen over the last 5 years or so is, well, first of all, I think everyone's become a lot more interested in their energy usage. Previously, you'd flick on the light switch, the power would come on, you'd pay the bill, and that's about it. But now everyone's interested in getting more information about how they use energy, what times they use energy, the different prices of energy throughout the day, home solar setups, that type of thing. So that's kind of one trend that I've noticed. Obviously, there's a lot more government regulation. So a lot of the change that we do see in the IT energy world is driven from government regulation. So, for example, smart meters and things like that. And I've also noticed that now that markets have become more competitive, utilities are taking more of a customer-centric focus. So they're getting a lot more interested in the different promotions and bundling and offers and so forth that they can give to their customers. It's not just electricity and gas anymore. It's electricity, it's gas, it's servicing your hot water service at home, it's selling you solar panels, maybe it's giving you a loan for some air conditioning, all kinds of things like this. And that has led utilities to invest in larger customer data platforms. So finding out their profiles, their habits, their interests, trying to predict different things. So, for example, trying to predict when a customer is going to leave your utility for another one, all that type of stuff. So in this kind of customer domain, which previously back in the day when you just if you lived in that area, you had that electricity provider. There was no choice or anything. Nowadays, the energy companies are very interested in trying to make sure that you're happy and that you feel that you're getting a good service from them.
Yeah, because it's definitely, the onus has changed, as you said, and I think we've seen that. I mean, interesting, part of Oracle's now renamed themselves Customer Services for Industry rather than being the utilities or the energy and water group. So that says something there. So I don't know what experience you've got of other products. Obviously, we've grown up in the CC&B, the Oracle ecosystem there. And one of the things I hear about CC&B is actually how good it is, because it's such a flexible product. It can do anything. Do you think that gives customers too many choices, or do you think that's part of your job as an architect to make sure they understand the choices and understand which directions to go in?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, with all of this power and flexibility, can come with some complexity, and usually it's you can only pick kind of two of the different three dimensions there. But yeah, Oracle CC&B, it's very powerful. It's very flexible. It can do anything from water, wastewater to internet services. There's even an implementation out there for some tax authorities using it in Europe. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to. I think one of the core ingredients of a successful implementation is just really understanding the product. There's numerous there's a huge amount of product documentation out there to really understand it. But the skill is understanding how the product is intended to work out of the box, and then trying to work with that. Now, obviously, every utility thinks that they're that they're very different and they're very bespoke. Although a lot of the best practices from the industry are baked into the product. So generally speaking, the product likes to work in a certain way, and so the skill. So what a good architect really tries to do is try and find a good balance between working with the product and working with the business and their specific requirements, and then and getting the most out of the product without inappropriate customizations. So yeah.
Yeah, which is easier said than done, isn't it? I mean, we all know about the customizations and things like that. So obviously things are moving ahead now towards CCS, which is the big thing, where customizations suddenly take on a different flavor. Would you say that you spend a lot of your time trying to make sure that it is a vanilla implementation or a vanilla solution that you're putting in there, or is that impossible to do?
Look, I think one of the key skills of an architect is the ability to influence, and so I really think that you kind of really have to sell. You have a look at the product, you have a look at the business need, you come up with a solution, and then you try and sell the solution that makes everyone happy. It's consistent with the product as much as it can be. Where it's not, you can extend the product in an appropriate way, and also keep the business happy as well, making sure that they're meeting their requirements and so forth. So it can be quite tricky, but if you do manage to do it, then you are rewarded with much lower maintenance costs, easier version upgrades, and so forth, and migrating to the cloud and that type of thing. So yeah, you can really, if you've got a smaller, higher skilled team, you can really get a lot out of the product and be quite agile like that.
How do you think with COVID, the world's changed? I mean, we used to do a lot of stuff where we'd bring people in, you'd get new people coming in, you'd swap them around projects, give them that experience. How do you see that type of thing happening now in the post-COVID world? I mean, you've been working for the last year through ourselves, and yet I don't think you've met physically any of the members of the team. I know we're trying to remedy that right now, but how do you think that's going to affect, the David McCracken of 23 years ago? If someone like that's coming in now, how do you think they're going to be able to learn and gain that experience?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I guess the same question can be asked for any kind of technology, really.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess. So I've noticed a trend where some organizations, they are either for one reason or another, they don't want to put in the effort required to build an in-house team and nurture them, and potentially take on a graduate or two, make sure that graduate is mentored, and kind of invest in the future of the skill set of that team. And that's where I think you get the best results. I've seen some organizations there, this is just too much work for them. They don't want to do it. Much better to just go hire a tier one consultancy, and then they can bring their small army of 30 CC&B consultants. I mean, it's obviously much easier for that individual manager or that individual organization, but then you get the bill at the end of the day, and you also have that problem where they can rotate resources in and out, and maybe you don't get that kind of good person that you want, or that kind of thing. So I think whether it's CC&B or some other technology or some other platform, Salesforce or something like that, I think the best way to go. Well, I really like working at places where they can see this, and they put in that effort to build an in-house team, develop that culture, and then that's where you can make sure that those skills are passed on, that knowledge stays in-house. I mean, as a long-term contractor, so many times, I'll see like 6 or 12 months comes along, and then and then these contractors go, and I just see so much knowledge, and just walking out the window, specific to that environment and that client. So I think that's the best way to solve that. Some places want to do it, and some places they can't bother, I guess.
I see this as something that I wish there was more investment in it. I'm trying to work out ways that we could do it ourselves. How do we bring on the next generation? Because it worked very successfully, particularly when I was at Oracle, SPL and Oracle, we did that. And actually, guess what? Some of the best architects that are around now were a product of that one. And it's like, how do we keep doing that? How do we keep bringing those people in? But obviously what we used to do is we'd put, 3 people into project A and 3 people into project B, and then we could swap them around and they'd be on site. And I think it's kind of the water cooler moments. We used to go and sit in the cafe at lunchtime or go out for a coffee or a beer after work and invariably talk about things and actually gain a lot of knowledge by actually discussing and doing it not in the office and maybe not with the customer or maybe with the customer. Depends who was out there, but actually by bringing all that knowledge together. Now in post-COVID, when people are getting together, I think there's a definite something that's being lost there, and I don't know the solution to getting it back. Because if we suddenly say to everyone, right, you've all got to travel, you're going to be on site 4 or 5 days a week, I think there would be uproar, and yeah, I think there's definitely a happy medium. But it's an interesting one because I do see, a lot of the people, and obviously it's an age thing with my point of view. A lot of the people that I knew who were my peers are now getting to the point that they're retiring, and it's like, well, who's taking that knowledge? As you said, once that knowledge is gone, it's gone. Who are the next lot coming through that are going to be learning that? Maybe with CCS, it's not quite so important because that knowledge is held in the cloud. But I actually don't think that's right. I think that, as you said, it's the architects, how you build that solution, knowing it's all there, is one thing. Knowing how to apply it is the real key skill.
Yeah, and also looking at an existing environment and just trying to work out why was it done the way that it was done. I mean, it's very easy to think that, well, whoever did it must have been crazy or they didn't know what they were doing. But usually there's a valid business reason or some other technology reason or something like that why something was done that way. And if you're new in an environment, it just takes a bit of time to work it out. And sometimes you're guessing, and then you're in that situation where everyone just keeps doing it that way because that's the way that we've always done it, and without challenging, yeah, why done in the first place.
It's an interesting though. That's the way we've always done it, so we'll do it the same way. It's like, actually, you've got to challenge those conceptions, haven't you, and actually get it to change. But I think it's, if I bring it around to motor racing, knowing how to drive around a corner quickly is different from actually being able to do it yourself. So you can look at a solution and go, yeah, that's the right solution, but actually knowing how to do it and putting that in place, is quite a skill there. You mentioned Salesforce as something, that's something that I see is really coming up through, bearing in mind that 7-8 years ago, Salesforce didn't exist, certainly not within the utilities industry anyway. How do you see that sort of integration? Because it seems to be happening more and more, and it's obviously a big thing that needs to be, brought in. How do you see that working?
So I've been involved in a few different. I've worked at a few different customer sites that have combined Salesforce with Oracle CC&B. So Oracle CC&B was originally made in a time where, what's the best way to say this? Oracle CC&B does have some good sales and marketing functionality, but its bread and butter, it's all about billing and metering, of course. And so that functionality was completely fine for most utilities for years and years. Although nowadays utilities they're kind of seeking a bit of an edge over in the marketplace, a bit of a competitive advantage, and so they've looked to Salesforce, who excels in this whole marketing and CRM functionality. So it's a very common fit, having to integrate the two. It's a little bit tricky because you're talking about these two kind of systems and which one's the master system, and because every system has a people record, and which one. Do we update this one and the updates flow through that one, or a two-way sync, which in the integration space is always a bit tricky and difficult to do. But yeah, no, I'm seeing more utilities are bringing in Salesforce. They like the I guess the agent journey. Um, they like I believe that they feel that it's easier to create like a custom screen or workflow for their call center people. One that's just kind of really cut down and just and very bespoke. And also, I believe it's stronger when it comes to things like bundling products together. We talked earlier before about how utilities they're selling more than just electricity and gas now. It's all these other things. They're running different campaigns, marketing campaigns. They're sending out emails. They have landing pages and all of this kind of marketing and CRM type of functionality. So yeah, I've been involved in a few, probably 4 or 5 Salesforce implementations now, and yeah, I see that trend continuing to happen. All I can see is the more and more sales of Salesforce and more and more implementations.
Do you think there's still some confusion about how Salesforce links into Oracle? Because in some ways you could almost argue they're competing products, but I think it's, if you carve out what you're trying to do, you're a utility, right? You need a billing system that works on that one, but then you need the integration. So actually, Salesforce seems to have really got a march on that one. I don't know whether Oracle will change that. Maybe Oracle will try and buy it. Hey, who knows? But at the moment, I think that seems like quite a good way of keeping people, yeah. One product does what it does well, and you get a different product that does something. So if that continues, do you think this Salesforce integration is going to get easier, or do you think it's going to get more confused? Might be a difficult question to ask you there. I don't think there's a right answer, but
yeah.
You've been on more than
Well,
one.
I think the answer is both. I think in some ways it'll become easier, in some ways it will become more confusing, more difficult. It really depends on the strategy of the enterprise. Do they want to have a kind of an application network, so a suite of products where they from different vendors, where they have the best of. So we'll have best of breed CRM here, we'll have best of breed billing and metering there, and then we'll use some integration technology to get them all to talk to each other. Versus that seems to be more of a trend now versus the old way, which is having these what they used to call Superman systems. So the big SAP that just does like absolutely everything that you could want. Um, and but it never really, well, I mean it did excel in some areas, but let's say that marketing function of SAP might not be as strong as, say, if you just got like Salesforce in there, kind of thing. So the trend does seem to be towards having the best of breed product, more SaaS products. That does introduce integration complexity, getting these things to talk to each other. And what else can I say about this? Yeah, that's essentially what my life has been the last 20-something years.
It's interesting because if you want, going back to where SBL came into things, SBL was predominantly CIS. And then they added in all these things like the metadata management, the asset management, et cetera, et cetera. So they've obviously built a product there that has these plug-in points that allow things to come in. So Salesforce, I guess, is just another one of those, isn't it? Just being brought in. So I say to you, in terms of Salesforce, one of the things that Oracle built with CIS was the original product, and then they added all these things like MDM and the outage management and things like that. So do you think Salesforce is just another one of those sort of plug-in points that can come back into the system?
Yes, well, I mean, to some extent, the two systems, their functionality does kind of overlap and they bleed into each other a bit. For example, I know that Salesforce is looking to do some kind of billing and metering and so forth, but I think I've had a look at some of they've got this Velocity Energy plugin or something like that. I mean, I've had some experience with that. To me, that's they're only just starting to realize how complicated the whole billing and metering space can be, and it's really nothing compared to what CC&B can do. So I'm not sure about what the roadmap is or strategy is with that product. I think when it comes to the Oracle side of things, I think and looking at CCS and what they've done there, I think they've recognized their strength. Their strength is billing and metering, I think they've also recognised that a lot of companies are taking the approach of having this variety of software vendors in their application landscape, and I think that they've decided to look, we're just going to focus on what we're best at, and which I guess is more of the I guess back office stuff of the utility world, with what you said just before, with the billing and meeting outage management, meter data management, and that type of thing. And I think they're kind of happy to have people connect their Oracle CC&Bs with the Salesforce, or with something like Oracle CX, which is Oracle's kind of Salesforce, let's say, customer experience platform.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because you're talking about the best of breed there, and I certainly see that being something. Whereas before, as you said, you had the Superman approach, and it's kind of like, but what you end up then with is you end up with one bit that is exceptionally good, but actually all the other bits that hang off the side of it aren't quite as good. So go best of breed. I know that produces complexities, but actually you do end up with the best solution there, all hanging off it, and I see that being the way forward with all these things. It's interesting because the Velocity team, the Salesforce Velocity guys, most of those are ex-CC&B or ex-Oracle people, or a lot of them are. So they've got that, obviously, intimate knowledge of how the product works. So I think that actually, Salesforce has done a brilliant job there by taking those people, because it's given them that internal view of things and able to build something that really does stitch together well. So hopefully, we'll see if there's more take up on that one.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it goes, for sure.
Yep. Well, we can look at this in 5 or 10 years' time and go, oh yeah, look at that. We knew, or we didn't know, or anything like that. So, with the way that you see the product evolving, what do you think the next step is? I mean, CCS is there, but can you see what the next big step forward is for utilities or services, or the whole industry?
Yeah, I think a lot of this, I guess, distributed generation. I mean, different regions call it different things, but basically a lot more localized networks. So rather than having the big power plant out in the countryside, and then distributing that power all the way back into the cities, I can see a trend more towards small communities, people sharing each other's solar panels and so forth. So I guess that's a change out in the real world, and so then we would need to have a think about, well, how would our software then support that? So, for example, would you have a small little version of Oracle CC&B Community Edition just for this little caravan park that are kind of off grid, or a little retirement village complex or something like that kind of an embedded network they call it in Australia. So potentially there could be something in that. I know also in Australia I've seen Oracle CC&B implementations for local government or councils for their rates notices and things like that. So I think there might be a trend to, I mean, traditionally CC&B, it was all the big utilities using them, like Pacific Gas and Electric, or
PG&E is going to pick them. Yep.
Big, like big energy company that provides energy for the whole kind of thing. So I can see it to smaller, and especially with cloud as well. With you can have much smaller footprint. You don't need to go buy all this hardware kind of thing. You can just spin up your instance, and so I think there might be a trend more towards that. I think it'll be used in different industries outside of energy and water, wherever there needs to be some kind of complex billing happening. So, for example, with our local government rates, you have in Australia, you have paid on time discounts. You've got you've got your different charges for your like your blue bin and your green bin and all this type of stuff. So they're kind of getting a bit of complexity there now, even at that kind of level. So that's one that I see. What else? Probably the one off the other one.
Yeah, it's interesting because this whole municipality idea. I mean, the whole energy network has changed, hasn't it? It had to be that you had these small mum and pop places, and they're produced locally. And then it was like, well, let's make a big grid, and actually that way, then if something goes wrong there, you've got that one. But now it's almost going back full circle, isn't it? To this hey, you've got a caravan park that's maybe got its own solar, it's maybe got its own battery, it might have some, wind, it might have, insert thing here, whether that be water or whatever else. And then actually it just runs its own micro network. I know when I was talking to Matt Gleason and Klaus Etienne about this, Klaus said that one of the big things in Australia is that they've managed to, by harnessing some of this technology, get rid of 1,400 poles, which, when you think about it, is actually a pretty major thing. I mean, that's a huge amount of infrastructure to look after that now you don't have to worry about. It's fabulous.
And in Australia, those things can be a bushfire risk as well. Maintaining those and so yeah, it's interesting. A lot of
I think the stuff out in Hawaii, the Maui stuff, I think that was believed to have started from actually cables collapsing and starting some of the fires there. I mean, whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But as you said, look, you've been around the world. I think this is the thing that we're all seeing, is that we tend to look very much with our local eyes at a problem. Actually, there are some massively different things in different places. Is there? I guess that's where the problem is there isn't a best practice that fits everyone everywhere in the world, is there? There's just different practices.
Yeah. I think things are becoming a bit more distributed, especially when you see some kind of remote communities in India and things like that. That they're living so far away from the rest of the energy network. They're kind of doing their own thing.
Technology. It's kind of great in some ways, isn't it? It's funny as well, actually, because I never used any of the video technology. It's been around for years. It really just took COVID for us all to actually start using it, which is kind of quite interesting. So it's funny how sometimes you need these disasters to help take technology on a bit, don't you? So there we are. Right, where have we got to? I think we were talking about poles being taken out in Australia and how that actually affects things.
Yeah, that's right. I believe we were talking about how it's just a bit of a prediction that energy generation will be a bit more distributed. I think a lot of this home technology to allow us to do this, for example, batteries, things like that. My brother even showed me once on YouTube. He showed me this kind of off-grid energy setup where if you have a property with a running stream, you can stick a little turbine on there and it just spins the turbine.
Archimedes screw and off it goes, yeah.
And that thing creates enough power to do 10 homes. So, I mean,
wow.
I just thought, well, if you had a system like that, you could power your own home and then you could charge your battery. Then maybe you want to sell your power to your little neighborhood, but then how do you charge for that? And all this type of stuff. So that would have, I don't know how far out that thinking is, but certainly pretty cool.
But it's happening now, though, because this microgeneration is here and now, isn't it? I mean, it is a huge thing, and I think that's, you get the water into it. I mean, there's this big thing, isn't there? Because one of the hardest things to do with electricity is to store it. I know it sounds silly, but you've only got so many batteries. That's where the electric cars perhaps fill in quite a big gap. I was looking at this, I think they call it the duck curve in the US, where what they're seeing is this whole peak in the evening, morning and evening, and actually trying to change our entire conception of actually charge your car during the day, because that's when solar's going flat out. You're getting all this electricity that can't be consumed. I know I had the pleasure of meeting the managing director of Volkswagen Finance for Europe, and he lived in the same village as I did, and we were talking away about the whole evolution of electric cars and where it's going. And as he said, they tried to, in Milton Keynes, where the headquarters were, they tried to put in 50 EV points, and they were told you couldn't. You could only have 10 or 20. And then he said what happened then is they then had to implement a piece of software which then said, right, you book your car into a charging point between 10 and 11. And then you have to go and charge it during that period, and then you have to unplug it because otherwise no one else can do it. And the whole way that all changes. So I think it just takes all of us to rethink what we're doing and how we do it. So the guy from Volkswagen was saying that they went to try and put in 50 charging points and were told they couldn't because the substructure wouldn't actually support that, the sub network. So what they've had to do is then implement an actual booking system using Outlook. Say, hey, you book your car in, so it becomes a meeting, and actually people change their lunch times or their break times to be able to do that. And that's interesting because actually that now becomes a real need, doesn't it? You go and plug your car in, but you can't leave it there for 12 or 14 hours. So yeah, we've got to change. I think we have to change some of the ways that we're thinking to try and make all this stuff work going forward. Lots of little changes.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because I had my first experience with a fully electric car just a few weeks ago. I was on holiday in Italy with my girlfriend. We were attending a family wedding, and the wedding was located in a remote part of Italy, and when I was looking at the cars to hire, there was a little Fiat 500e, fully electric, and I thought, well, this is going to be pretty cool driving around Italy in a little Fiat. I mean,
Wow.
nothing more iconic than that, right? And then I was like, I mean, I'd driven a hybrid before, you put in the petrol and it's all fine. But I thought to myself, okay, well, how do I go about charging this thing, and how long does it take? And okay, it's got the cables in the back, but lo and behold, the accommodation that we stayed at, yeah, as I said, very, very, very small part of Italy, right near the border with Slovenia. They actually had an EV charging thing at the accommodation, and a full massive solar setup. And so here I was thinking that there wouldn't even be a charging thing in town, and there's one right at the property that we're staying at. And so yeah, I plugged it in, and it's got the little display thing, and it was showing that it's taking in so much energy from the sun and so much from the grid. And yeah, basically I charged the car up for free.
Wow.
In the middle of the day there. Of course, it's free once you buy the whole, expensive system. But it was really cool, yeah. And then yeah, very, very cool little car to drive. I found it was a bit aggressive on the braking. But that's how its recharging mechanism thing works. But yeah, very cool experience.
Yeah, I haven't yet driven one. I've been in them, and I mean, yeah, forget about acceleration and anything else. I mean, I've never known anything like it. The torque and the way that they go is just phenomenal. I kind of still like the noise of the V8 though, so yeah, it's going to take me a while to get to that point. But yeah, it's interesting though, because with all this micro production, what I'm seeing, we've got a couple of people that we know in South Africa who work with us and for us, and they've got this load shedding. So what that's actually forcing everyone there to do is to go off and build their own PV and have their own battery. And it's kind of funny how actually their adversity is probably going to put South Africa in a great position going forward, because you'll have all these people who are generating their own electricity. And you kind of need, it's like they often say, the biggest technological advances happen when there's a war, because you have to. Yeah, so South Africa has obviously had to therefore become this micro generation through necessity, and it needs something like that. A bit like COVID got us all using video software. A war tends to move technology on much quicker, and so what's happening? Adversity in South Africa is actually causing them to perhaps move ahead. I haven't resisted the EV route. It's just not something I've done. It's not on my horizon to do until I decide I'm going to change my 145,000 mile Mercedes. But that's a job for another day. But yeah, I think it's all changing.
In Australia, we have the issue of range anxiety, because obviously we travel quite vast distances. The range on this Fiat 500e that I rented was about 250 kilometers, which I thought, well, look, that's plenty, because this where I'm going is only 150 kilometers away. But I think that estimate is based on inner city driving, where you're starting and stopping and or idling and all this type of stuff. But because I was just out on the motorway, just doing 130 kilometers an hour, just straight with basically no braking, I only kind of just made it. But I mean, that Fiat, I don't think it claims to be a big long distance car or anything like that at all. But yeah, it was enough to get me there, and yeah, charged up at the property. I actually went ahead and installed. I found out there's an app on your phone that shows you where all the charge points are. You attach your credit card to the app. You can book a bay where you can charge up your car. And there's all these different speed charges. But I think even the quickest one, you're still talking 20, 40 minutes an hour kind of thing. And then they and then they basically charge you a parking fee if you just kind of leave your car there and forget to take it, just to encourage you to kind of move
To
on.
get out of there. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was all interesting. But yeah, when I was returning the car, I'm like, I got back to the airport, went to return the car, it was half full, and then I realized that, I don't have 2 hours here to hang out at the airport and let things charge up. But luckily they just half full and it was fine. But
yeah, I'd never thought about that actually. Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny. It's different dynamics. You just don't think about this stuff, do you?
yeah. You kind of just usually it's a mad rush to the airport, and you just like, you just put the petrol in and just kind of go. And but yeah, so it's a bit of a different dynamic. But yeah, it was a pretty cool, interesting experience, and it did really make me think of like if you were kind of a community that kind of wasn't so close to the metro area, and you had your own solar out there, you had your cars, you're charging them up, you can do all this kind of semi off grid, let's say. I thought it was kind of quite interesting and fun.
Yeah, it's a bit, you're a little bit of a pioneer still doing all this EV stuff. And as I say, look, I can't comment too much, never having done one. But yeah, one of my business partners, he's been a long-term advocate. He's got his own wind turbine, he's got his PV, and he's an electric car. And part of the problem with that one was actually the non-Tesla network was not very good. And I'm going back, he sold it about 2 years ago. So for the 3 years prior to that, he had a Jaguar, and man, trying to find somewhere to park it, the software infrastructure hadn't caught up actually with how good the product was, because it was a fantastic car. But you just couldn't support everything that it was doing. So yeah, a little bit of a journey then became a little bit of a journey into the unknown. And as you said, range anxiety and things like that was certainly part of it. But I think what's interesting about the EV, which I quite like, is that actually, yeah, so being an EV pioneer is certainly, makes life interesting, doesn't it? So in terms of the sort of the future, what does it hold for you? If someone new was trying to come into the industry, would you recommend they get into sort of like the utilities billing side? Do you see that as being a fantastic route forward?
Yeah,
Maybe fantastic's not the right word, but
I mean, it's been a very interesting and rewarding career for me. I mean, as long as people still like to use electricity, I think there's always going to be, and as long as the governments keep changing regulations, which both those things seem like that they'll both go on forever. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend it. I like it. I find it quite interesting to just think about. I mean, if for someone who has that type of mind, that's always just curious about how the world works. All these kind of modern conveniences that we just have at our fingertips, and yeah, I think it's very interesting and exciting place to work. I like it for sure.
Yeah, good stuff. No, agree with you. Look, David, thanks very much for your time. Appreciated it. It's been good chatting, and it's been good talking about so many wide-ranging things. And yeah, I'll look forward to hopefully meeting up with you within a couple of weeks. But if not, yeah, thanks very much for your time, and really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to speaking with you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on, Chris. Have a great day, and I'll catch you soon, hopefully.
All right. Thanks, David. Take care.